Hello everyone, and welcome. My name is Ben West, and today I'm excited to share what I have learned this semester about my students' motivation, both from the articles and content I've read, as well as from two very real students who further shaped my understanding of motivation in humbling ways. Many of you watching this are new teachers, or soon to be teachers, of bright young students, and I wanted to give other educators, parents, and school leaders a few research-based strategies to support those learners who struggle with motivating themselves. To show a quick overview of what I will be covering in this presentation, I'll start by defining motivation before moving into the motivational issues I personally ran into while teaching this semester. Then, I'll paint a picture of the main motivational theories that I used to come up with the strategies that worked in class. Finally, I'll wrap up with a brief conclusion to put a nice bow on top and hopefully leave you with a bit of advice that concerns what I would try differently the next time I attempt each strategy. What is motivation? Motivation concerns our willingness to act or behave in a certain way. There are plenty of factors that go into why someone is motivated to do something or not, and my acts of motivation experiments were dedicated to finding out how, or if, I could change what motivated my most struggling students. I want to start by introducing you to the two students whose struggles fed my projects this semester. The first is Bailey. Bailey is a 10th grade biology student who came into class exhausted every single day. Without fail, she slept through lessons, avoided working on assignments, and Christmas treed through all of her tests, just to go back to sleep as soon as possible. She never disrupted my class, but she never engaged with it either. My second student is named Tyson. Tyson is a freshman in my environmental science class. He struggles with every assignment, sits out of group work, never participates in labs, and is often tardy or even absent. When sat down, Tyson openly admitted to me that he hates school. How was I meant to begin to help students who seemed so defeated and beaten down? Both students forced me to confront a harsh reality, one in which many motivational problems are not about capability. Tyson and Bailey were more than capable of succeeding in my courses, as that was how they were designed. Their problems stemmed from their beliefs, or lack of. Beliefs about themselves, or if school mattered, or if effort would lead to improvement in my class. That's where the four guiding theories of motivation I followed come into play. Expectancy value theory, self-worth theory, causal attribution theory, and goal orientation theory. Let's start with the expectancy value theory. This theory posits the idea that students perform their best and engage with material when two main conditions have been met. Condition 1 is the expectancy part of the theory. Does the student believe they will succeed? The second half concerns perceived value. Does the student believe that their task has value? There are three main types of value that a student can place on material, these being intrinsic interest, which concerns whether the student enjoys the task. The next is attainment value, which is the degree to which the student is allowed to express themselves through their work. The last is utility value, which is how useful for the future a student deems a task to be. For example, if a student wants to have a career as a car mechanic, they may be extra engaged in their automotive course at a high school. Research shows that when both expectancy and value are high, persistence, engagement, and achievement all rise. But they're like two halves of a bridge. When one side collapses, the other is useless. With Bailey, I noticed that she didn't expect to succeed and that she viewed academic success as something outside of her control. She never studied and rarely participated because she didn't see the point. Tyson, on the other hand, struggled with task value. He outright told me that he saw school as pointless. So even if he believed he could succeed, he didn't want to. What I needed to do was try to increase both their confidence and the value of the tasks that I gave them. Up next is self-worth theory. This theory describes how students are driven by a fundamental need to feel capable. Our modern world often ties monetary success and fame with worth. In a school setting, it's closely related to academic success. This creates an unfortunate vortex of behaviors where students feel the need to be competent but are afraid of exposing themselves as not smart. Avoidance can seem to be a great shield at first glance. It's much easier to be seen by others as someone who doesn't try than to be seen as trying and then failing. Bailey's habitual disengagement seemed like a protective behavior. If she never engaged, she never failed. Tyson's reiterations of "I hate school" worked much the same way. By deflecting from their sense of competence, my students had created a protective cocoon around themselves. This theory can be used to remind us as educators that students don't always avoid assignments because they're lazy. Sometimes it's because they're scared. From Weiner, causal attribution theory focuses on how students explain their successes and failures, and then extrapolates that reasoning to explain how they might form in the future. Weiner identified three main dimensions of attribution theory: locus, stability, and controllability. Locus focuses on whether the cause of success or failure is internal or external. Reasons like "I didn't study enough" or "the test was unfair" might be given. Stability refers to whether the cause will remain the same moving forward or not. Maybe a student thinks, "I will always fail my math tests. I'm just not good at them." Or, "I just didn't study enough this time." Controllability concerns whether the cause in this is in the student's control or not. "I just didn't try" versus "I probably have an undiagnosed learning disability, so it doesn't matter if I tried." Students who are prone to blame uncontrollable, stable, and external circumstances are more likely to fail in the future than students who are able to attribute failure to internal causes like lack of effort. Bailey often blamed her failures on being drowsy or her environment. These were external factors that she used to excuse her failing in the classroom. Attribution theory shows us that the way a student perceives their failure or success is more important than the actual reality of the outcome. The final theory is known as goal orientation, which posits the notion that students commit to tasks with different goal orientations that shape their motivations. To put it simply, this theory attempts to uncover why someone engages in a task. Students typically fall into one of a few different orientation categories. Performance-based orientations are divided between performance approach and performance avoidance. A performance approach orientation focuses on demonstrating competence to others. For example, if I wanted to show off how smart I am, I would try and score the highest grade on a test so that I could brag to my peers later. Performance avoidance deals with avoiding the demonstration of incompetence to others. While frequently useful, if we're not careful, performance orientations can become unhealthy mindsets to entertain. Research shows that students with these orientations often demonstrate increased anxiety over class assignments and peer relationships when compared with their mastery oriented classmates. Mastery orientations, on the other hand, are focused mainly on improvement, not the end result. A student with a mastery orientation may redo an assignment in order to better understand the content, while a student with a performance mindset might avoid turning the work in if they believe it isn't good enough, in order to avoid looking incapable. When I attempted to implement these theories in the classroom, I quickly learned that while something sounds great in theory, it rarely works out perfectly in reality. Motivation is a deeply personal and unique experience. Bailey responded to my interventions because she was emotionally ready to try something new, even if it was just a tiny fraction of what I was hoping for. She was willing to experiment with effort and self-reflection, and it felt good as her teacher to see that I had some small impact on how she motivated herself. Tyson was not ready, unfortunately. His barriers were up in full force, not just academic, but emotional and relationships as well. I'm not sure any single theory would be able to reach him where he's at now, but I am more than ready to try again with a new approach. Overall, my experiences in the classroom taught me that motivation cannot be a one-size-fits-all. You will need to match each theory to the right student in order to address every unique need, which is definitely easier said than done. Now, I'm going to leave you with a few tools that I took advantage of that I encourage you to try and implement in your own practices. The first is a daily check-in system, one of the simplest but most powerful ways to gauge a student's mindset. There are many ways to handle the application of this, from a Google form to a brief conversation at the door before they enter the classroom. The goal is to assess how our charges are feeling, what might be affecting their learning, and whether or not they need immediate supports. The hope is that the check-in gives you actionable information so that you can adjust instruction to catch motivation issues before they blow up. Mastery-based grading shifts the focus of the class away from performance to an atmosphere that emphasizes progress and learning. The idea is that students will no longer feel afraid to make mistakes and revise their work. I personally believe nurturing the mastery mindset is key to cultivating a healthy classroom culture. Reflection can be a powerful tool, but many of our students don't know where to begin without a guide. This is where the structure of a focused reflection comes into play. Students and teachers need opportunities to think about why they succeeded or why they struggled and then failed. Guiding them with thoughtful questions like, what did you do this week that helped you learn? Or what is one thing that you want to change before the next unit? This trains them to become more self-aware in their academics. The final tool is what I called short-term goalposts. These are small, manageable checkpoints that progressively get more difficult for the student. In my case, I had to start with writing your name on the assignment. Once students see their own progress in real time, they might begin to believe that they can, in fact, succeed in the class. The key here is to set goals that do not overwhelm the student all at one time. This semester changed how I view student behavior in my own room. Motivation is not about laziness or will. It's about beliefs, identity, and their experiences. Small steps in the right direction matter, and students can surprise you when they feel safe. Being humble and realizing that the theory doesn't necessarily align with true practice are keys to success. Ultimately, it's our job to use these theories as launching grounds for your own ideas that are specifically tailored to your students. Be flexible. If one approach doesn't land, try something new, but don't give up. Be patient and appreciate small victories. Thank you for watching my thoughts on motivation in the classroom. These are the references I used throughout, and I highly recommend you to visit each of them for yourself. Thank you again, and have a good evening.